And what you need most of all in a place of crisis is a leader that communicates, not just sometime, not just half the time, all the time. And
Yeah.
I think many people don't underestimate how much people need to hear vision, leadership, detail, communication.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to All Things Leadership Podcast, where we believe that every believer is a leader, and we believe that you can make an impact in your life, in your space, in your organization and family. Today, we have one of the best leaders I know, Tristan Kirn. He's a world changer, and I'm looking forward to have a chat with him. And let's welcome him, Tristan. Boo, 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 boo. Welcome,
Good
brother.
to be with you, man. And it's exciting to see where this is going, man. I think this is a great platform to really reach
Yeah.
people, man.
Thank you so much for just connecting with us when you're on the other side of the world and just making time to contribute into to people's lives in this leadership journey. So maybe just give us a little bit of a background of where you come from, maybe how you grew up and stuff like that. And
Yeah, so I grew up in South Africa, same as you, and yeah, pretty much was I'm in my 30s now, and I know getting on, but yeah, I grew up pretty much. I lost my dad when I was quite young, which affected our family quite a bit, and it was kind of at that stage that I started drifting away from, yeah, just from God and from church, and somehow found myself back working at a church and have been doing so for the last decade and a bit. So yeah, that's pretty much a bit of a background story of where I've come from. So yeah, grew up in a place called Hlui and then Pietermaritzburg, and now living the dream in Cape Town. So
yeah, yo, that's cool. And how old were you when you came to Maritzburg?
sure, I was about 11 or 12. Because when my dad passed away, we just had to find some other means of work for my mother, who's a teacher. And so, yeah, so we came to Pietermaritzburg, some good schools there. And that's where we settled. So, yeah.
Bro, where's the college accent? What happened to it?
Yeah, I went to Maritzburg College, man, and pretty much matriculated from there and went to, I had 1 year at UKZN, and then I went
Yeah.
to seminary and South African Theological Seminary, and I graduated from there 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
It took a while to get a degree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's cool, bro. Apparently, were you a Satanist? What happened there, bro? Because you jumping to a theological school. What happened to you?
Yeah, so yeah, it's quite interesting, just the story that God has you on, you know. So as I said, when my dad died, I was quite angry towards God, and I listened to quite like aggressive music, and learned to play drums, and listened to more and more bands that were very aggressive but very overtly against God, against who He is. And I still listen to, heavy music now and then, but this
Yeah.
was like really against Christianity. And I kind of took those lyrics to heart. And me and a few friends that just hated the church, hated
Yeah.
everything to do with Christianity. And then I was at high school in my matric year, and someone was preaching a sermon, and I was actually there to almost interrupt the meeting. I wanted to close
Yeah.
down the Christian meeting, and he basically just said Jesus is alive. And it was at that moment that people would call it being born again or being saved.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was quite a radical change. I was definitely on the other end of the spectrum, and then everyone was like, "Who is this guy? He's joining the church. He's
Yeah.
he's become passionate about Christianity." So yeah, it was quite. I lost many friends, and even friends who weren't part of that were like, "You're too strange. You're like bipolar. You've just shifted."
Yeah.
God's been incredibly kind. Hey, so yeah.
Yo. That is so amazing, Vit. And so now you join the church. So you
Mm.
get saved at school, and then you join the church. Then you get what were you exposed to leadership first time at church, or could you recall a time when you were first exposed to anything called leadership?
I Yeah, I think because of the background, just coming from the radical background, I thought there's no ways like anyone would ever trust me to be in any leadership position, to be honest, or any kind of
Yeah,
influence. And so I was happy to just play in the background, just be part of, the furniture. And so I used to play drums in like a pretty heavy band. And then when became a Christian, they were desperate for a drummer. So started playing drums there. And yeah, very early on, a guy, his name was Glenn, and yeah, he had such a huge impact on my life because he walked me on the journey of discipleship, and he walked me and being like, you need to learn how to lead yourself first before you lead others. And he was
yo,
pretty radical. I mean, there was still stuff going on, the process of becoming Christ-like takes some time. There was still stuff in my life I needed to sort out. And he just took every step. He was patient, but he was strong. And he was just like, these are areas that I see. And it was hard, you can be offended. You can be like,
yeah,
I don't want to change. And
yeah,
but he was intentional, and I learned a lot about early leadership from him, to be one-on-one with people, and not just
yeah.
on a platform. So yeah, leadership for me is one-on-one, not just from a conference or wherever I saw leadership.
Of which it's the principles that we see in the Bible as well. How Jesus does it.
Yeah.
And bro, I've never asked you this. How did you end up joining the creative team at the church?
Well, bro, I think that was interesting because I was in a worship team. I was part of the band, and I did know a lot about computers, and so I used to build computers, and I was kind of just in the background. And then our church joined One Life Church, so we were actually a separate church called Grace
Yeah.
Church International. It's a guy called Terry leading it, great guy, also like a mentor to me, and we joined One Life Church, and it kind of felt like I'm not too sure what I do now. And Grant came up to me and said, hey, listen, I hear you can do things with computers. Do you want to join our creative team? Just become a bit of an intern. We'll see how it goes for a year and we can talk from there. So it was a big risk taker from Grant. Like he hardly knew me. He knew a bit of my background, and so joined the team. Had never worked on an Apple machine before. It's the first time I saw an Apple machine, a MacBook. I was in the Windows world. And I never saw myself as an artist. I never saw myself as creative. But I realized through technology, creativity comes in all shapes and sizes.
Wow.
And I actually realized, God has gifted me with something, with creativity. And so, yeah, it was a big learning curve. Like it was something like there was a whole new door that was open to me just because I haven't had that opportunity. And with that opportunity was really, really interesting to see that how God has used it now, being almost 10 years, still in the creative team.
Yo, bro, I remember the first time, I think one of the days when I had a conversation with you. You always had a dream of having media in isiZulu, what brought the awareness of reaching or conveying the message to different cultures and different languages? Was it something that you were always conscious of? And what was your thought process in terms of that?
I think that it's more the book of Acts, eh? So I mean, if you look at the book of Acts, the way that Paul interacts with other cultures, I mean, here's a man who's like from Jerusalem, and he goes into other regions, other places, and instead of just assuming that people understand him, and he goes all out to use the culture around him to bring about the message. So you look at it, Acts 17, he uses it, and even look at the scriptures, right, in the New Testament. They're actually written in Greek because that's what everyone spoke at the time. And so
Yeah.
for me, reaching people within a culture, you don't reject the culture, or you don't bring your own culture.
Yeah.
You actually use what's in the culture to try communicate a message, and whether that's language or the different tools around. That's my daughter in the background.
Yeah. She was steady.
And yeah, it really does. It's really effective. And what we want to do is we want to present the gospel as effectively as possible. When you look at Jesus, he used parables, things that people every day could like understand in their own
Yeah.
language. Whereas the very religious leaders, they were just so distant from the people in
Yeah.
the way that they spoke, the way that they dressed, the way it just there was this distance, and we want to close that distance as much as
Sure.
possible.
Wow. So now you were part of a media team that was led by another guy.
Mm.
How how did the change occur, and how did you receive it?
So, as I said, I stepped onto this creative team, really talented guys, and I've always been a little bit overwhelmed with how incredible the talent is around us. Like, it just feels like
Yeah.
I'm nowhere near everyone else on these types of levels, but it was led by a guy called John Anderson, who was a really out there
Legend.
kind of guy. He just was, you never knew what each day was going to hold. And I think I'm a little
Yeah.
bit of a different leader. And so taking it over, he wanted to go plant a church in Johannesburg, which he's still leading now. And so there was a vacuum gap, and he's like, "Hey, I see you taking, the media team over," and
Yeah.
realizing along the way that I'm not John, I'm not Grant who brought me onto this internship. I'm Tristan, and so
Yeah.
in that way, I think was really a learning curve for me. And I think stepping in someone else's shoes, there's always the temptation to be exactly like them. Hey, this thing is working.
Yeah.
Let's keep it that way. Whereas we actually always need, innovation and yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah. So I think just being comfortable in your own shoes and realize what God has gifted you with, and not to try be like somebody else.
Yo, that's amazing, bro. Have you ever received some job offers in the corporate world? And guys, what was your response?
No, there was
if ever?
there was a few stages when early on before we were One Life where there were two paths. I could obviously creativity. I think is the one place in the church which does straddle both worlds. There's obviously
Yeah.
branding and marketing agencies.
Yeah.
There's video production. And there was a stage when I was thinking about it. And so I actually went for a couple of days just to work in a brand agency, just to see what it's like. Met some really
Yeah.
talented, incredible people. But yeah, I think my heart is that, for a large part of church history, the church actually pushed the world in terms of art and creativity. And my dream is to see that restored in some way.
Yeah.
Like we've surrendered to the Hollywoods, the Netflixes, we've surrendered to these brand agencies, and actually to bring creativity back that really pushes the boundaries in showing what God is like through beauty, through creativity, through stories, through narrative. And so that's really the just really the I suppose the heart behind why I didn't go corporate. And I don't think there's anything, less holy than the other thing. I really don't.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
it's really important. If you feel called there to go, then you can make just as an impact. But for me, it was like that was the dream, and to go push that. So yeah.
Yo, that's cool, bro. Let us fast forward to 2020. COVID hits. and you've got your strategies, who's doing what, how, and how did COVID disrupt your world, and how did you adjust to that? Because I think you came on the other side stronger and wiser. How was the journey for you? And please take me through it.
COVID, was hectic. I think was one of the things that was happening at the time, and I know we're going to talk about this later, but it does form part of the story. My wife and I felt called to go plant a church in Dublin in 2019 in Ireland.
Yeah.
And like that's where our focus was going to be. We're going to lead the creative team remotely. We're going to go start planted, and then obviously March comes around. Was actually near my birthday when the president begins to speak. But we had already actually started thinking about what would happen if COVID hit. So I don't know if Grant would
Okay.
like to admit this, but 2 months, actually in January, I started to say, hey, Grant, like this thing is coming. And I think we just need some thoughts around it. So we had actually put together a contingency plan like in early March already. If this happens, this is what will happen. And this is what we'll go. We still didn't think it would happen.
Prepared for crisis.
Yeah, and I think it's prepared for crisis. And you know what? You can't always be in a state of preparing for crisis. You can't always be in that level. But you like part of us as a people is to be a prophetic people. And prophetic people is just saying, hey, I see this thing coming. And you know what? It might not come yet, but if it did, what would we do? What is the strategy? And they were broad strokes. I'm not saying we had a detailed plan. And I think also to be happy with the disruption happening this side of the world. So actually just saying, hey, listen, I have a dream, but I'm going to put those dreams on hold. And actually, this is what the church needs. I'm a pastor, I'm a creative leader. This is what the church needs at the moment. And actually laying those things down and going into full strategy mode. So it was a huge disruption, but I'm very glad for. I think one of the strengths of Grant that's really amazing is that anyone who's been around him will know he's an over communicator. Like the guy communicates all the time. And what you need most of all in a place of crisis is a leader that communicates, not just sometime, not just half the time, all the time. And I think many people don't underestimate how much people need to hear vision, leadership, detail, communication. And so 2020 happened and we moved in with Grant and some other creative guys into a big house so we could be locked down together. And I think we must have produced, like 2 videos a day in varying lengths, some like a preach, some half an hour podcasts. We were doing Instagram live. And but it was a learning curve. That's all I can say. It was. I still feel the after effects of that. Sometimes I still wake up hearing the president's lockdown message in my mind.
Hey, my fellow South Africans. Hey, you know that it's family meeting. Things are gonna change.
For sure.
Especially during lockdown level 5, bro. It was like so intense.
Yeah.
It was so intense.
And I think it was also, I think in a crisis, everyone tends to think about themselves in a shrinked world, and especially when you have a team. I mean, a lot of the teams are interns, a lot of the team are young, and to just keep that vision in front of them. Hey guys, the whole church is resting on us at the moment. And to not shrink back, but to give vision. And I always take my hat off because I think a lot of people had a lockdown where they didn't have much of a purpose. We had even people on our own team who didn't know how to do creative things. Like I don't know what my purpose is. And I think at that time it was like the greatest feeling of, hey, we're in this together. We're going to get through this together. And it's I wouldn't want to go through it again. But we've had many churches look at us and be like, I don't understand how you guys grew in lockdown. Whereas shrunk back. And so to don't waste a crisis. Just don't waste a crisis. Crises are going to come. Don't waste it. Just use a crisis as a springboard. And you know what? It's going to look messy. It's going to look like sometimes like lack of sleep. It's going to look like chaos. But you don't want to come out the other side and be like 3, however long it was, I can't even remember. But like a year over, and it felt like I've wasted it, So yeah.
Well, I remember one of the things that you kept mentioning was the why we do what we do.
Mm, mm.
What's the most important thing in communicating vision?
Sure, 100% why we do what we do. So a lot of guys, I got this from Simon Sinek, his great book on Start With Why. And if you look at some of the great organizations around, a lot of good organizations will talk about, what to do or how to do it, but great organizations talk on why we do what we do. And so the church is the greatest why. I mean, that is the greatest why. And so I think it's very easy to drift into simple detail. Hey, here's how we get the job done and whatever. But for me, the big thing is, why do we do this? Why do we do this? How? And the how and the what will come. Like, there are various details you can think, but for me, if I'm going to communicate for 20 minutes, like, 19 of those minutes must be like, here's the big vision, why. And I think especially during a crisis, the why is really, really important. Like, people lose that why very quickly and can shrink back. And I think you need a why, not just, where you work, but also in your own personal life. Like, why do I do that? Why do I do that? And anything you can't have a why behind, I think you pretty much need to scratch out and be like, I need to rethink this area of my life. So
fantastic. Yo, that is amazing. And tell me about the dream, the Dublin, in what you say, Dublin. I really just do. How did that thought come about, bruh? And why that specific space?
I mean, you've been to Holland, right? You've been to Europe, and I think one of the things that's so tragic is you look at church building after church building just empty, used as a museum. And if there's one thing I do believe about our God, is that He can breathe life into dry bones. And so I'm like, there is so much potential here. And my wife and I are from Europe. Half our family are still there. So there was always this heart dream to go impact Europe in some way. And I can't speak any other language besides English. My wife can speak German, but
I speak Zonglish, bro. Just mix Zulu and English.
And so Dublin, Ireland was the dream. Obviously, COVID came along and messed those plans up. And I think what people can do is they can be very they can be, in some ways, when something changes plans, they can really just say, yo, this I've missed it. And not to miss it, just be like, hey, you know what? Paul wasn't bleak when a door was closed. He just moved to another area, carried on.
Yeah.
And so Grant said during COVID, while we were streaming out, he saw the stats from Cape Town. And so he's like, listen, you guys are young. You guys haven't planted before. Why don't you plant in the safe country before going out so far? And so we came to Cape Town to plant. We planted in Woodstock. So instead of going north to Ireland from Pietermaritzburg, we went south. It's like, sounds like Joe running away. And but I'm so glad we did, and I'm so glad that there needs to be flexibility in your life plan, whatever, for a crisis, for a change, and also just for learning opportunity. I think the best investment for yourself is to carry on learning. Like, we don't stop learning after matric. Like, there's always lessons to learn. There are always people to learn from. And I'm so glad we did, because there were a couple of lessons I still needed to learn as a leader. And so we came down to Cape Town. We with the help of some other guys, we had 7 locations in 3 years. And it's been quite wild. It still feels like crazy. But God's been incredible faithful. And I think one of the things we can do with our lives, we can be like, my life is in pause until I see, God open the door to my dream or whatever. But actually, what are you doing right now? What is the steps in front right now? What is the thing that's in front of you that God's put there right now? And so I really, truly do believe that you're faithful with what's in front of you, and God will open those doors eventually. So We'll go back to Dublin one day. We're hoping to get to a trip out there next year just to
Yeah.
look and see and start dreaming those dreams again. But yeah, there's still work to be done down here.
Wow.
There's pioneering that down here. And so, yeah.
Wow. Yo, that's incredible, bro. Reversing to the creative team, how do you develop a healthy culture within the creative team? And like leading a team remotely is a different vibe from leading a team in one space. How is that?
Okay, well, let me start with that question first. I think remote leading is very, very different to in-person leading, and I'm still learning that. I think it's been the biggest learning curve this year, is that I think I've got a bit of ADD. What's ever in front of me is the most important thing right there and right now. Whereas remote leading, you actually have to be constantly, actually, there is something else that's happening out there. And so I've done both. We were in a media team together in one big open office. There were 15 people, and we've actually reduced our size to our media team to about 5 or 6 people. And so it's actually the reverse. And so the great benefits of remote learning are firstly focus. You can really focus on the thing that's right in front of you. There are no distractions. But at the same time, the problem is that the vibe in the room is not there. And so you have to constantly create that vibe as much as possible. And that can be quite tiring. So you have to just be really, really good at how you communicate, the ways in which you communicate, realizing that when you communicate over text, no one is going to pick up your tone of your voice. And so they might, if there's feedback or whatever, they might feel that. So knowing what medium to use, do I text this person? Do I voice note this person? Do I jump on a call with this person?
Yeah.
And I think that was a big learning curve for me. That was like, wow, this is very different to coming over your shoulder in a room, and that human element. I miss it. I miss it a lot, but it's just the nature of where we find ourselves. And so, so I think focus has been great. Productivity has been great, but I think just the one-on-one discipleship, I think that's the thing that you have to work double hard on to keep motivated. So it is quite a learning curve to do remote stuff.
Sure. Hey, bruh, like time is not on our side. But it's such an amazing thing to hear you speak on these things, because with some of those principles will you pick them up as you go about in life, and you don't really process it. What you're saying is adding so much values to our viewers, and definitely to myself. I love that you are wild. I love that you are adventurous. I love that you claim to be introverted, but what you do is big. like it's beyond, bruh, and just to see you journeying from a timid person, you just want to be part of the furniture, to being front-footed, and to being, bro, you're so kind. Don't lie, bro, you're so kind. You believe in people. Definitely me. Remember when I used to take all those Photoshop designs and present them to you, and you just say, does it have date, time, and place? The most important things, and really, really appreciate you, Hero.
And I'm really excited to see what's happening with this podcast. I think we share one thing and I really appreciate about you, is that you want to see people go further than you've ever been. And over your life, you encourage people to go further than they've been. And I think that's what Jesus' heart was as well for his disciples, go into all the world. And they did. They did do that. They went beyond their comfort zones. And so, I'm hoping that even though it's a creative team, that guys plant churches and they preach, and they do ministry, and not to say those things are better, but that they think beyond, then this is the only thing that God has called me to. But
Yeah.
So good to be here, man. Really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll catch up.
Bruh, some of the lessons I learned from you today is that music has power. It's important that we listen to the right stuff. Leadership is not just a crowd thing, it's a one-on-one discipleship thing. And obviously picking up from X, and you use culture to convey the message. You look and you listen, and then you say, how can my message change what's happening, and how can we keep on repeating it? And it's important to find your own voice and not compare yourself with the previous leader. There is just so much I've learned today. This is one of the many episodes that I'd like to speak to you about as the time goes by. But thank you so much for blessing us with your time. Super blessed, and yeah, danko. Thank you so much. Say hi to Kirn, the kid, and travel safe, man.
Cheers, man.